Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this closed rule. So much for an open process and so much for a free flow of ideas. I also rise in strong opposition to the underlying resolution. Once again, the Republican majority is choosing to ignore the single most important issue facing the American people: jobs. My Republican friends have instead brought forth a resolution, H-Res 38, that they tout as some sort of spending reduction measure. In fact, the resolution doesn't cut a single dollar, not one dime, from the federal budget. If this were a good faith effort, there would be some numbers in this resolution. Instead, the resolution says that we should, and I quote, assume non-security spending at fiscal year 2008 levels or less, end quote, without defining non-security spending or specifying exactly what those levels might be. In other words, Mr. Speaker, this is a budget resolution without any numbers, which is why it is so meaningless. We are told that the numbers are on their way, that the Congressional Budget Office will tell us on Wednesday of this week what the impact of this resolution would be if it were actually put into place. So why are we here today debating this issue? Why can't we wait until Wednesday when we have the numbers? The answer is as plain as the calendar on the wall. It's politics, pure and simple. The Republican leadership has scheduled a vote on the resolution tomorrow, just before President Obama addresses the nation in his State of the Union address. That way, they'll have a fresh set of talking points for their response to the President. They'll be able to say, look, cutting government funding, when of course they haven't cut anything. Another problem with the resolution is that it reinforces the terrible precedent that the Republican majority established in their rules package at the beginning of this Congress. Under those rules, get this, under those rules, a single member of Congress, the chairman of the Budget Committee, has the authority to determine spending levels for the government for the rest of the year. Now, like all of my colleagues, I have a great deal of respect for the current chairman of the Budget Committee, Mr. Ryan, but I strongly disagree with the notion that he and only he should determine something as fundamental as the budget of the United States. Mr. Speaker, we have to vote in this House to change the name of a post office, but we can't have a vote on how much we should spend on education, on food safety, on infrastructure, on environmental cleanup, or on medical research. That's a far cry from the openness and transparency that my Republican friends promised. Last week in the Rules Committee, I offered an amendment to this resolution that would have allowed the other 435 members of the House the opportunity to vote on this critical issue. But my Republican colleagues defeated my amendment on a party line vote. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the resolution walls off defense spending from the budget acts. We hear all the time from my friends on the other side of the aisle that everything should be on the table. Why then would they take hundreds of billions of dollars in potential savings off the table right out of the gate? Even Speaker Boehner in a recent interview said, and I quote, "I believe there's room to find savings in the Department of Defense," end quote. Well, if that's true, and it most certainly is, then why does this resolution treat defense spending as sacred and untouchable? Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the federal budget, the Republican majority is not off to a good start. Their rules package paved the way for them to add nearly $5 trillion to the deficit. Last week they voted to repeal the health care law and add another $230 billion to the deficit. And now they are rushing a one-page bill without a single number and without any specifics about how and where they want to cut. What we are doing today, Mr. Speaker, is not real. There are no tough choices being made today. This is show business, and quite frankly, it diminishes the legislative process. The American people deserve much, much better, and I urge my colleagues to reject this closed rule, and I urge them to reject the underlying bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.